Have many people considered that the period after 80 is more of a battle for survival than a serene twilight? Although it's not often spoken aloud, the truth is that old age doesn't always bring wisdom, peace, and quiet dawns. Sometimes it brings unsteady steps and unsettling thoughts never experienced before. A person lives a long life full of struggle, hardship, labor, and creation. But after crossing the 8th decade, the world transforms beyond recognition, and it's hard to convey this without experiencing it firsthand. Outwardly, the mirror may still reflect a familiar image, but strength, memory, and independence relentlessly fade away like worn fabric. And here's what books and pension brochures omit. This very stage of life becomes a test not only for the body, but also for the spirit, emotions, and psyche. This isn't about fear, but about understanding, about voicing what many elderly people feel but hesitate to express, to prepare mentally and practically for the invisible difficulties that lie in wait after 80. It's worth learning about 7 challenging but important truths of aging. A person deserves to know them to face the coming changes with dignity, resilience, and the possibility of choice. After all, preparedness is not pessimism, but strength and realism. The first bitter truth is the rapid shrinking of the circle of loved ones. By 80, the phone rings less and less, not because one is forgotten or unloved, but because many acquaintances are no longer alive, and there's simply no one left to call. Loneliness is one of the most agonizing aspects of aging. The circle of communication steadily narrows. Friends pass away, neighbors move to nursing homes, and relatives, absorbed in their own concerns, visit less and less often. The problem isn't just the losses due to death, but also the gradual, almost imperceptible distancing. The usual weekly gatherings for tea with a friend no longer happen, and the voice that sounded every Sunday after church service falls silent forever. And the worst part is that no one can take their place. Peers become a rarity, and young people cannot fill the void in the heart. This shrinking circle of communication affects not only the daily routine, but also deeply wounds the soul. Loneliness is not just being alone. It's a feeling of invisibility. Waking up with the thought that fewer and fewer people remember the story of your life, know who you were, and are interested in your well-being is unbearably difficult. The loss of these connections leads to a loss of one's sense of worth. Questions arise in the mind. Am I still needed by anyone? Would anyone notice if I lay in bed all day? Therefore, it's important to acknowledge that the circle of communication will inevitably change, perhaps faster than expected. But there's also a bright side. One can always sow new seeds of connection. Many retirees start volunteering not only to help others, but also to avoid feeling lonely. Others find joy in simple but regular contacts, such as chatting with the store clerk or attending book club meetings at the library. The main thing is not to strive to restore old connections, but to create new ones that suit the current stage of life, so as not to dissolve into silence. If you're over 80 and feel a crushing emptiness, the pain of losing departed voices, know that it's not a figment of your imagination. This is one of the most difficult trials that aging brings. But if you can name this feeling and try to make at least one new contact, it will become a lifeline. After all, despite the passing past, the story of your life continues, and somewhere it is still needed. Next, it's worth paying attention to the body. After 80, it doesn't just age, but begins a kind of quiet rebellion. Today the knees are still fine, and tomorrow every step echoes with pain. This is not a sudden collapse that inspires horror, but imperceptible, minor betrayals in the form of stiffness that wasn't there before, an unexpected loss of appetite, a daytime nap that has become not a choice but a necessity. Many hope that their strength will fade gradually. But when everything becomes unpredictable, it deals a crushing blow. At 3 a.m., after a peaceful sleep, you suddenly lie awake staring at the ceiling. Digestion, which has worked flawlessly all your life, suddenly begins to reject your favorite foods, as if the body is changing the rules without warning. This instability makes you feel betrayed by yourself. And a disturbing question arises. Is this forever or temporary? Should I see a doctor or wait? Uncertainty is exhausting, turning pain into emotional burnout due to the lack of support from one's own body. And with all this, most people around, especially young people, don't notice these changes because outwardly the person still looks familiar. From the outside, it seems that everything is fine. The person walks, does household chores, even jokes. But no one sees how much effort it takes to maintain this rhythm. People around don't notice how a person adjusts their tasks to hours of vigor, how they skip a meal to avoid the exhausting heat, how they sit down not out of fatigue, but because standing becomes difficult and their legs begin to tremble. The hardest part is the hidden exhaustion that doesn't stop and doesn't follow any schedule. Sometimes there's a surge of strength and hope, but the next day the condition worsens and hope fades. This is not a sign of weakness, but a natural reaction of the body, which is working with double the load to maintain its former functions. The person remains themselves. But now it's important to listen more carefully to your body, move more cautiously, and rest more often. There are several simple but effective ways to help yourself. For example, drink warm water immediately after waking up, do light stretching before bed, go outside for at least 10 minutes. These small rituals remind the body that you are on its side, that you are not giving up, but learning to adapt. This is the true strength of mature age, not in fighting changes, but in the ability to keep pace with them. The third reality is a narrowing circle of communication. This is one of those difficult truths that one has to come to terms with. The circle of acquaintances becomes smaller, sometimes gradually, and sometimes abruptly. People with whom you communicated every week stop answering calls. Neighbors with whom you shared a cup of coffee move away or disappear from life. Even your own children, who used to need support, suddenly become too busy with their own lives. This doesn't mean that they have stopped loving you. It's just that circumstances change. Children themselves become grandparents. Their time is spent on work, grandchildren, health concerns, and stress. Despite this, love remains, but the number of calls decreases, visits become less frequent, and emotional closeness weakens. At first, one justifies this with words. It's temporary. They're just busy right now. But weeks go by, birthdays come, accompanied only by short congratulations. Holidays become less meaningful. More and more often, one immerses oneself in memories, repeatedly scrolling through old dialogues, clinging to memory, because new bright moments are encountered less and less often. In addition, with age comes a social shift. Perhaps one no longer drives at night, or it has become more difficult to understand speech and noise. Maybe it takes 3 times as much effort to get ready and go somewhere. Even when there's an opportunity to spend time with someone, one begins to doubt whether they want to go, assesses how justified it is, and often the costs seem too high. Because of this, a dangerous vicious circle develops. The less one communicates, the less noticeable one feels. The more one is not noticed, the harder it is to accept, although no one is trying to ignore one on purpose. It's just a fact, and it hurts. One elderly woman, Svetlana, 84 years old, admitted that the most difficult moment for her is not being alone physically, but feeling that no one cares about her call, no one is waiting for her presence. When she missed a meeting at the local interest club, no one even asked where she was. However, it's important to understand that a narrowing circle of communication doesn't mean the disappearance of life. In order to feel connected to the world, it's not necessary to have many acquaintances. It's enough to have 1 or 2 close people with whom you can share joy or simply lie in silence. Sometimes this means taking the first step yourself, even if it causes discomfort. Instead of waiting for a call, you can write a letter or accept a neighbor's invitation, even if you want to stay home. It's important to give strength where you are really needed. Mentoring younger people, volunteering if your health allows, sharing your story with others. It may seem that no one is listening, but there will always be those for whom your experience will become a support. It's not about being needed for attention, but about making an effort. And it all starts with the realization. Even if the circle of communication has narrowed, the value of the person has not decreased. Another reality is the burden of worrying about others. There is a special, quiet kind of pain, the pain of losing loved ones. This feeling is especially acute after 80 becoming commonplace. One part's not with one, but again and again with those who have been around since childhood. Brothers and sisters with whom they shared not only parents, but also common memories, a spouse with whom they dreamed of living their whole life. Such a loss is not just a separation, but a heavy burden of memory, which now has to be carried alone. One becomes the only one who remembers a funny incident from 1963, the only one who knows why there is a dent in the garage door. There is no one else to say, "Remember?" and see a knowing smile in response. This is a special loneliness, not just the absence of interlocutors, but the realization that no one else keeps the memory of life the way one does, that the story has become unique because there are no more witnesses. It's as if the stage of life has emptied and the audience has scattered. There may be a feeling of survivor's guilt, not related to a mistake, but to the question, why did I stay and others didn't? One reevaluates past actions, remembers missed calls, carries unresolved questions to which there will be no answer. Grief doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. One man, Robert, 87 years old, said, "The hardest thing about aging is not the pain in my knees and not the worsening eyesight, but the morning when I habitually take a second cup of coffee or hear my wife's voice in my head answering a question that I didn't even have time to ask." That's what they don't talk about enough. There is strength in remaining the keeper of memory, courage in getting up every morning in an empty house and continuing to live despite everything. True beauty lies in the ability to share stories, leaving behind the imprint of those who have passed away through one's own voice. Reality number 5 is related to the gradual reduction of freedom after 80. Something unusual begins even after 50. Even with a clear mind and awareness, those around seem to be sure that independence is fading. Freedom begins to decrease smoothly, almost imperceptibly. At first, small things appear. Children insist that one doesn't drive, although they do it confidently, or try to control what they eat when they go to bed, or take medicine. This is not due to a lack of love, but due to anxiety. But over time, care turns into pressure. One no longer makes important decisions independently. They're gently guided and nudged. This is irritating because one knows their limits and believes that they have earned the right to choose what is really important to them. However, those around seem to forget that age doesn't deprive one of the wisdom and inner peace acquired over the years. Sometimes one feels invisible in a conversation, as if their opinion ceases to matter. One woman, Jean, 84 years old, said that her daughter had taken to organizing literally every aspect of her life, from morning walks to choosing TV shows. Jean admitted, "I understand that she's acting out of love, but at the same time, I feel like not a grown woman, but a child." She feels her independence gradually fading, and this is happening not because she can't cope, but because those around have already decided that she is not able to cope. This is one of the quiet battles with age, the struggle for the opportunity to manage one's own life in a world that seems to care, but doesn't always listen. It's not about stubbornness, but about preserving dignity, about being asked, not ordered, so that one can still choose and not just agree with the decisions of others. It's important to set boundaries not as a manifestation of selfishness, but as a necessity. You can say, "I'm grateful for the help, but I ask you to allow me to cope on my own." One has the right to express disagreement if something causes discomfort. Loved ones may be surprised at first, but over time, they will learn to respect the position, because the more one protects their independence, the longer they remain truly connected to this world. Choosing what to eat, where to go, and with whom to communicate are not trifles, but an important part of expressing one's personality. No matter how old one is, the personality deserves its space. One of the most difficult trials after 80 is not physical pain, but the emotional loss of loved ones. One begins to notice that those who used to fill their days, participate in calls and holidays, gradually leave friends, relatives, acquaintances. Sometimes even with a loved one, it becomes especially difficult. This is not just sadness, but a special silence that penetrates into everyday habits. In mature age, grief doesn't come in waves as before, it comes quietly. One wakes up and feels. There's no one to call to remember events that happened 40 years ago. No one remembers what I was like at 20. No one will understand my old joke like they used to. Such quiet loneliness is always there, like the background noise of an old radio. For many, this is a feeling of detachment from the world, as if one is floating in a river where everything flows forward and memories of the past slowly disappear, and no one teaches how to survive this. No one prepares for how much strength it will take to continue to appear, smile, and communicate despite this invisible burden. Karp Alexievich, 87 years old, said, "In the last 5 years, I have attended far more funerals than I can count. With each departure, a part of my life goes away. This feeling is present in many, but they are silent not because they don't feel it, but because it has become an integral part of their existence." But what helps to stay afloat? The decision to still open up to new people, even risking losing again, to not stop looking for reasons to laugh and celebrate, to invite someone for tea, even if they are much younger, because connection with others is not just a way to fill time, but a chance to stay alive. If one is going through a difficult period now, one should not be ashamed of their experiences. Try to appear strong when it is difficult inside. It's important to remember that even in new circumstances and with new faces around, there will always be room for joy. Let sadness go alongside, but don't let it interfere with moving forward. This is how the life path continues. Reality number 7. Accepting one's own vulnerability with respect. One of the deepest understandings that comes with age is the awareness of the fragility not only of the body, but also of habitual actions. It used to seem simple to tie shoelaces, get up from a low chair, or hold a cup without spilling. This doesn't mean that one constantly feels old, but every uncertain movement, even a slight pain, reminds that the body now has boundaries that it didn't have before. Such awareness can shake confidence, make one doubt whether to go for a walk alone or eat at home alone. Now the plan for the day is built not on desires, but on safety, which makes the world seem smaller. But the point is that fragility is not synonymous with weakness, but a sign of wisdom. This is the body saying, move more carefully, listen to yourself, and take care of yourself. Life often reminds that one used to be full of strength, but now the real power lies in accepting changes with honor. Nina, 84 years old, said words that stuck in my memory. "I am not ashamed to walk with a cane. I have earned it." It was her reminder of the long and significant path she had traveled, and that she is still moving forward. Such an attitude is a source of vitality. In a modern world, many try to hide their limitations, pretending that everything is as it used to be. But there is also another category of people who accept the truth and become stronger. They are not shy about asking for support, using help and support, not rushing, which allows them to maintain independence much longer than those who refuse to accept reality. It's important to understand that one should not fight their vulnerability. It's better to find an ally in it and move on. True strength after 80 is not in excessively overcoming pain and proving one's abilities to everyone, but in the ability to choose the main thing, to conserve energy and live the present moment with gratitude and wisdom. The most significant thing is how one can go through all the trials with courage, dignity, and a special quiet strength, understandable only to those who have lived a long life. Aging is not only about the physical body, but also about meeting serious life lessons with one's head held high and an open heart. It's not necessary to pretend that everything is easy, because it's not. But the great dignity is in recognizing this truth and meeting it with wisdom, not fear. One is not a burden and is not forgotten. One is here, and their presence, their stories, their laughter, and their indomitable character are now more valuable than ever. It's important to take care of oneself and remember that life has deep meaning. One should not hide their feelings. It's important to show emotions and acknowledge them. Loneliness is familiar to everyone, but one should not give in to it. It's necessary to maintain a lively interest in everything, to be open and sincere. One should deal with money honestly, but not forget about generosity. In all actions, one should choose kindness. If the body starts to work slower, one needs to meet this with pride and not stop.